everyone, remember a few days ago we looked at a big chunk of 9.2 with all of the champion changes, but there's a whole nother side to this with a bunch of jungle stuff. If you haven't watched the other 9.2 video, go and watch that. I'll link it down below, obviously after watching this one. But we actually even have some more champion stuff in this one because apparently there weren't enough before. And this is the biggest patch of the year by a mile, just as preseason ends. That to me makes absolutely no sense. Almost as much sense as this meme change to start with. So they're going to lower Jax's base AD by 1.67. They're also going to lower his Q damage by 15 as well. So we're going to jump into that change and then we'll look at some more balance changes and then we're going to look at the jungle, but I will throw some timestamps down below. I'm pretty sure Riot is actually having the giggle right now. When they took away some of Graves' AD, Warwick's as well, it's a pretty big disaster right now. They're even targeting Jax. For real, apparently at low reload though, the jungle is kind of overpowered, but at higher reload, he's overpowered top lane, and that is why it's so hard to balance him. I'm going to guess that the AD is aimed at the jungle farming and the early clearing, whereas the Q is more aimed at fighting in the lane phase as Jax. I could be wrong, maybe I am, but I don't think this will take enough power away from him to stop him being a top tier pick in either one of those roles. Something else you're going to have to know as well for 9.2 is the Baron buff is changing. It's going to be weaker at 20 minutes and scale up to the same amount. It's actually half as good to start with, so it starts at 12 to 48 AD and 20 to 80 AP instead of 24 to 48 AD and 40 to 80 AP. Those cheeky Barons now will be half as good as they were before, basically, if you snap it up at 20 minutes. As a jungler, or any role I guess, it might mean that you put a higher priority on the Rift Herald before, which is going to stay as good as it is right now, and make sure you get that, not falling back onto the kind of thing, well, like I can just get a Baron anyway after it's gone, so it doesn't matter. If you want to end the game early, that is the real option to go for. Grab the Rift Herald. Baron will still be pretty good and stuff, but it won't be anywhere near as strong. The other side to that is that your Inhib towers are now going to be tankier as well, so 70 armor and magic resist all game instead of scaling from 55 to 70 between 31 and 45 minutes. What it should mean is that if you do get a big lead in a game, you're cracking open that Inhib and stuff, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and it should probably stop as many pure stomp games. These Shyvana changes are actually pretty cool. They're pretty big, so we're going to dive into those now. Her passive bonus physical and magic damage against dragons has been doubled to 20%. Her E basic attack damage has been increased to 3.25% maximum health from 2.5 as well. Either way, she now does 20% more damage to dragons, which is double and actually pretty insane. She could already solo them, she already took them really quickly, and now she's going to melt them. And the part that I think is so clutch here is that they actually were just buffed. The first dragon of each of the type now gives better stats, so getting that first one, even a second one, for example, is going to be stronger than before, and it actually helps your team way more. That kind of gives you a reason to pick Shyvana, right? Really good at taking dragons, but having more damage on her E is definitely nice as well, because it's not just 0.75% bonus, it will be a lot more than that. The mark that your E applies lasts for 5 seconds, and every single auto attack on them deals that damage, so if you hit them 4 times, that is going to be 3% more damage and 13% maximum health damage. I honestly think, combined with everything together, Shyvana might actually be pretty good in 9.2. Now, Absolute Focus is also getting a nerf, in my opinion, the strongest non-keystone rune in the entire game at the moment, so of course it is getting that nerf. AD is down to 18 from 24, and the AP is down to 30 from 40. It's honestly quite a lot of AD and AP to lose on here, but it's also kind of like, what else are you going to take, right? For mages, you can probably go into the cooldown reduction if you wanted to, but as a secondary, like on an AD carry, you could opt for the mana maybe, but honestly, you're probably still going to go for this in most of your games anyway. Some other champion stuff that we have, so Aatrox, his Q first swing AD ratio has been lowered to 55 to 75% from 64 to 80%. Your E recharge time has also been increased to 26 seconds to 10 from 24 to 8. This champion always seems to get fed in my games at the moment, but his Q should do less damage now, and maybe the bigger part to this is that the recharge time on his E is 2 seconds higher, so he's not going to be as safe. Riot also think that he's much better when you've learned him properly, so it's not going to be likely this will be enough, and down the line he'll need a new set of nerfs as well to bring him back down to another level again. Cassio is also getting some stuff, so her miasma, her W cooldown, has been increased by 2 seconds rank 5, and the damage per second has been lowered by 20 rank 5. The cooldown early is the same, and you won't actually notice this change or the other change until mid game, really, when you're at like 2 to 3 items. The damage though is 20 per second, so if they stood in it the entire time for some reason, it'd actually be 100 damage that you would lose. That is a lot to lose, really, but to be fair, nobody is going to stand in it for all 5 seconds, or they shouldn't anyway, so maybe it's closer to like 60 or maybe 80 damage. Either either way, that is kind of a fair chunk to how much she can do mid-game at that 2 to 3 item point. And right now, funnily enough, she's actually strongest at that point with Ludens, Leandries, and Rylai's. We talked about Ergot changes before. They've been actually changed again. So his base armor has been lowered, but his Q mana cost has been increased by 10. His W cooldown increased by 4 seconds, rank 1. The armor is lower so that you can spank him in the lane phase if that's kind of your thing, but his Q mana cost is up, so less poke damage, more cost if you miss it, I guess, and his W increased by 4 seconds to start the game, so it's now up to 17 seconds. That is a very long time for a normal ability to be on cooldown, and this is his shield, remember, as well. You can't really fight without it. I guess you probably could actually, but you don't want to anyway because it blocks a lot of damage. These changes are all about making it easier to fight Ergot in the lane phase. He takes more damage, he won't have his shield up as often, or a bigger window at least to punish him if he uses it and then you go in afterwards. Zara is another one. So her mana regen has been lowered, and they've actually given her back the damage on her root that we had before and nerfed her mana regen instead of that. If you get hit by her stuff, her spells, her full combo especially, you're still going to be utterly boned, but if you can dodge, then she's going to run out of mana a bit faster. It's kind of cool in one way because if you're accurate and you play Zara well, then it's fine. There's no rule change at all, but now it's kind of a mana game in lane phase. If you dodge, you make her spam her stuff and you burn out her mana, she's going to be useless, and that is when you'd go in and fight her because she just can't do anything. I actually said in the last video as well that 5 AP wasn't enough of a nerf to Oblivion Orb and Morello. Apparently they watched the video, they must have learned that. I'm just kidding, by the way, but now it's actually 10 AP on Morello, 5 on the Orb, but the Orb is 100 gold more expensive. If you want to go just Orb and leave it like a lot of people do right now, it's not going to be as good. The penetration is the same, and that's what you really buy it for. With Sorks, it's almost true damage. It's kind of insane. So a lot of people go Ludens, they go Sorks, Oblivion into Death Cap, and don't upgrade into Morello. Volibear is actually getting a few buffs as well, which we haven't seen for a while. So his E bonus damage to dashing or airborne enemies changes to 8% maximum health now from a base 40 to 120 plus 30% of the AP. So that is gone and it's now just 8%. Your ultimate has a little delay on it before the initial bolt. That's going to be lowered now as well, and the AP ratio has been increased by 10%. The first thing that actually came to my mind though is since it has no scaling or anything like that at all, it's just a flat amount, he might come back as a support again. We saw this when they added the interrupt on his E because a lot of AD carries have dashes and stuff that he can actually stop, and he does quite a lot of damage, but he also takes away their one defensive tool. The final champion thing is to Jarvan. So his E attack speed has been increased to 20 to 30% from 15 to 25%. The other thing to remember is that we are going to move into more crit AD carries being good again after the changes in 9.3. So you might not see a ton of him in 9.2, but the attack speed buff to those champions later would be really good, especially if you combine it with a defensive support like a sensor. I love how I actually just call support sensors. Now, that's not quite what I meant, but still. Jarvan can pack a ton of damage, but he definitely doesn't have the same like dueling power as some of the other big boys right now like a Kha'Zix, and that's kind of why he struggles. Now let's go into some specific jungle stuff. So if you're a jungler and you click the timestamp and you skipped it, welcome to the jungle stuff. Red Smite has been changed, so the damage per tick has been lowered to 19 to 42 from 20 to 54. The total damage though is lowered by quite a lot, so 57 to 125 from 60 to 162. The duration of that damage is now down to 2 seconds, and it no longer grants vision. The whole mark thing is still 4 seconds, so the damage reduction stays for that same time and everything like that, but the damage won't be as much unless you keep applying it. This should make duelist junglers just a little bit weaker. They'll miss the vision when chasing people as well, but the idea is that Riot made those smite items when junglers were a bit weaker in the game anyway, and now they aren't. They have a lot more damage themselves. Blue Smite is also going to reflect that as well. Damage lowered to 20 to 156 from 28 to 164. It is just the damage going straight down. That's pretty much it. It's honestly not that much at all. Basically think of it like this. If you use smite on somebody in 9.2 and they survive with 8 health, then you can blame Riot. If not, it was probably you. The biggest thing really though that we've left until the end of the video to look at properly is the experience change. So the experience on general camps is going to scale to 125% from 150% instead like it is right now. Your buffs are going to scale to 125% from 157%, and the scuttle gold and experience is going to scale to 180% from 200%. Let me explain why for a second, right? So Riot think that basically junglers at every single elo, by the way, are too strong right now. Part of that is because they are mostly what influence the early game right now, and the game has moved to focus on early just a little bit more. If they can affect early so much as well, then they shouldn't really do as much damage as they are at the moment, and they also shouldn't be the same level as the solo laners either. Over time, Riot think that they have given more gold and experience to junglers to help them a little bit more, but probably a little bit too far recently. So what does that actually mean for the game with the experience, right? Well, early game, nothing really at all. Experience starts the same, and junglers can still do red to level 2 gank if they want to, or their usual crucial pathing. Later though, they should fall a bit more behind and become a little less irrelevant at least as well. Jungle camps, by the way, if you didn't know, cap out when they hit level 7, and Scuttle Crab caps out at level 9. From that point onwards, you're going to be earning 125% experience instead of 150%. So what most likely will probably happen is you'll end up closer to the bot laners levels, the AD carry and the support, instead of the solo laners. It isn't the end of the world because your gold is still the same, mostly anyway. You can power up with items and stuff, but it won't be as common to have a big level lead anymore, and that sometimes can make a difference. It's hard to tell exactly what effect this is going to have because it's a system change. It's really big change actually, but one thing that stands out to me is if you don't do much early game and you do fall behind, you're probably going to end up staying behind a lower level. The way you kind of come back into a game as a jungler right now is you farm back into it, but you can't really do that as well as before. Also, for farming junglers actually, like a Shyvana or Master Yi, you're going to get less experience by power farming compared to before, which cannot be a good thing for those type of champions. The last thing in this video is a bunch of Kayn stuff. So we have a ton of changes, and I'm not going to lie, I don't really play Kayn much at all, so a lot of this goes over my head. I've done a lot of research into this to try and give you guys an idea, and basically the passive bar fills up with general fighting now. It's not separated into which type of champion you are attacking. Once that bar is filled though, then it does the calculation to see which you've been hitting more, and it unlocks that particular form. The thing is though, the big difference really is that you can continue to collect orbs for the other form that you haven't unlocked, and each orb reduces the other form cooldown by 5 seconds. That is the main passive thing, but obviously I'm showing you the changes so you can read them for yourself, and if you play Kayn, you should know honestly a little bit more than me, and maybe you can even tell us in the comments what that actually means. You can also now recall before your E shadow step has finished, as long as you're not in terrain, which will save you some time on basing. You can also emerge from your target that you've ultied at a shorter distance than what you currently can. However, Shadow Assassin Kayn actually also has additional range on his ultimate when exiting. As I said, I'm not going to go super in depth with these apart from saying that it's supposed to be a buff and make transforming make more sense for you, be easier to understand and plan around, and easier to track or at least control now. So that is part 2 of the massive changes for 9.2. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know what you think about everything, but for now I will leave you with robots.